What would you do if the very people sworn to protect you became your greatest threat? In the dead of night, a single moment of unchecked power unravels a web of corruption, betrayal, and unexpected redemption. This isn't just a story, it's a question of justice, humanity, and the choices that define us. Stay tuned as the truth unfolds in ways you'll never see coming. Welcome, we bring you compelling stories that tug at your heart and spark deep reflection. If you love gripping narratives and emotional twists, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your support fuels our creativity and helps us craft even more impactful tales. Join our growing community. Together, we can turn stories into something truly unforgettable. It was a quiet night at a small, dimly lit gas station on the outskirts of town. Nicholas Cole, a seasoned FBI special agent in his early 30s, pulled into the station to refuel after a grueling day. His car, a sleek sedan, gleamed faintly under the flickering neon sign. Dressed casually in jeans and a jacket, his badge and gun were discreetly hidden. Tonight, he was just another man trying to get home. As Nicholas filled his tank, his thoughts wandered. He relished the brief solitude, the rare moment to breathe in a life often dominated by high-stakes decisions and danger. The street was deserted, save for the faint hum of distant traffic. It was the kind of night where nothing should go wrong, but life had other plans. Enter Officer Noah Daniels, a middle-aged local cop with a reputation as fiery as his temper. Noah's patrol car screeched to a stop nearby, its sudden presence slicing through the peaceful night. His gaze locked onto Nicholas, his face twisting into suspicion. In his mind, the expensive car and Nicholas's casual demeanor didn't add up. Fueled by unchecked biases and a need to assert authority, Noah approached. "Evening," Noah said, his tone sharp and interrogative. He scrutinized Nicholas, his eyes scanning him from head to toe, as if searching for a reason to act. "Nice car. Where'd you get it?" Nicholas, always composed under pressure, offered a polite smile. "Just filling up. Long day at work." Noah's eyes narrowed, unsatisfied with the response. "Work, huh? What kind of work puts you in a ride like this?" The questions carried an edge, a challenge Nicholas recognized all too well. Remaining calm, Nicholas replied evenly, "It's my car. Is there a problem, officer?" The simplicity of the response only seemed to aggravate Noah. His voice grew louder, cutting through the night like a blade. "Step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them." Nicholas hesitated, his instincts urging him to de-escalate. Flashing his badge could make things worse. Noah wasn't reacting rationally. This was personal, not procedural. But before Nicholas could speak, Noah's assumptions exploded into accusations. "You stole this car, didn't you? Guys like you don't drive cars like this unless they're up to no good." Noah spat, his hand resting on his holstered weapon. The hostility in his voice was palpable. Nicholas took a deep breath. "Officer, let's take a step back." But Noah wasn't interested in conversation. In a flash of rage, he swung his fist, landing a heavy punch on Nicholas's jaw. Staggering backward, Nicholas fell to the ground, stunned by both the attack and the sheer injustice of it. Before he could recover, Noah was on him, cuffing his wrists with a roughness that left no room for resistance. In the stillness that followed, the only sound was Nicholas's steady breathing as he gathered his thoughts. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The metallic clink of the handcuffs echoed in the quiet patrol car as Nicholas Cole sat in the back seat, his wrists bound tightly. The leather upholstery smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, mingling with the adrenaline coursing through the confined space. Officer Noah Daniels, seated up front, gripped the wheel with unnecessary force, his knuckles white against the dim glow of the dashboard. Nicholas stared out of the window, his expression calm despite the storm inside him. His jaw still ached from the punch, but it wasn't the physical pain that stung. It was the sheer indignity of the situation. He could feel the weight of the badge concealed in his jacket, a reminder of who he was and the irony of the moment. But he said nothing, choosing to watch and wait. He had all the power here, though Noah Daniels didn't know it yet. "You think you're clever, huh?" Noah sneered, glancing at Nicholas through the rearview mirror. "Driving that car around like you own the world. People like you think the rules don't apply." Nicholas didn't respond. Instead, he observed Noah carefully, the frustration in his voice, the bitterness laced into every insult. Nicholas wasn't just listening to the words. He was piecing together the man behind them. Noah's anger wasn't random. It was the culmination of years of disappointment and misplaced blame, channeled into the uniform he wore like armor. As the cars sped through the empty streets, Noah's vitriol escalated. "You know," he began, his tone colder now, "if I wanted, I could find a stash of drugs in your car. That's all it would take. One report, and your life's over." Nicholas's eyes flickered, a mix of disgust and intrigue. This wasn't just a bad cop. It was a dangerous one. Noah wasn't bluffing. He was testing boundaries, eager to see if Nicholas would crack under the pressure. But Nicholas had been through far worse. A slow smile crept onto Nicholas's face, one that didn't reach his eyes. "When you uncuff me," he said, his voice calm and deliberate, "I'll be the one arresting you." Noah snorted, his laugh sharp and mocking. "You've got guts. I'll give you that. But you're in my car, in my cuffs. I'd rethink the tough guy act." The words lingered in the air, but Nicholas said no more. Instead, he leaned back, his silence unnerving. Noah's laughter faltered, and a flicker of unease crossed his face. Something about Nicholas's confidence didn't add up, and it gnawed at him. By the time they reached the precinct, the tension was palpable. Noah yanked open the door, hauling Nicholas out roughly. But as they stepped inside, Nicholas stopped, turned to face him, and reached into his jacket. With a swift motion, he revealed his badge. The bold letters FBI gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Noah's smug grin evaporated, replaced by stunned disbelief. "Now," Nicholas said, his tone icy, "let's talk about your crimes." The fluorescent lights in the precinct flickered slightly, casting a cold, clinical glow over the room. Officer Noah Daniels marched Nicholas Cole inside, his grip on Nicholas's arm tighter than necessary. The officers at the desk barely glanced up. Another routine arrest, or so they thought. But the tension between the two men radiated like a live wire, setting the scene for something far from ordinary. As Noah pushed Nicholas forward, Nicholas straightened his posture and turned to face the room, his calm demeanor unsettling. His voice, steady but commanding, broke the silence. "My name is Special Agent Nicholas Cole," he announced, his badge held high. The gold letters FBI shimmered under the harsh lights, drawing immediate attention. "I am here to report an incident of police misconduct." The room froze. A murmur rippled through the officers, their gazes darting between Nicholas and a now visibly pale Noah. The latter's mouth opened and closed, his bravado evaporating like mist under the sun. "What the hell is this?" Noah stammered, his voice faltering. This is some kind of mistake." "No mistake," Nicholas interrupted, his tone sharp. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek recording device, its blinking light a silent witness of everything that had transpired. "I've been recording you since the moment you approached me at the gas station." The room fell into stunned silence. Noah's face turned ashen, his hands trembling slightly as he pointed a finger at Nicholas. You can't do this. You were resisting, acting suspicious." Nicholas stepped closer, his gaze piercing. "Suspicious? For pumping gas? For driving a nice car? No, Officer Daniels, the only suspicious behavior here was yours. And now it's time for you to face the consequences." With deliberate precision, Nicholas reached into Noah's belt, unhooked the handcuffs, and locked them around Noah's wrists. The metallic click echoed through the room, each snap a punctuation mark on Noah's rapidly unraveling world. "This is a joke," Noah spat, struggling against the cuffs. "Captain, you know me. You've known me for years. Tell him." The precinct captain, a grizzled veteran with weary eyes, approached cautiously. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice low and skeptical. Nicholas didn't flinch. "I have evidence that this officer abused his authority, assaulted a federal agent, and made threats to fabricate evidence. It's all here," he said, holding up the recording device. Noah's desperation bubbled over. "You don't understand. I've been under stress. Family issues, money problems. It's not what it looks like." Nicholas studied him for a moment, his expression unreadable. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his response. Finally, he spoke, his tone firm but tinged with a faint trace of empathy. "I understand that the system is flawed," Nicholas said. "I know the pressures you face, but that doesn't justify abusing your power or targeting innocent people. The badge doesn't give you the right to trample on others. It demands that you rise above." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Noah sagged, the fight draining out of him. The captain stepped forward, nodding to Nicholas. "We'll handle it from here." Nicholas handed over the recording, his stoic demeanor intact, but as he turned to leave, a flicker of something deeper passed across his face, a recognition of the system's cracks and his role in mending them. The room buzzed with whispers. The fall of Noah Daniels, a stark reminder of the power of accountability. The interrogation room was cold and sterile, its walls painted a dull gray that seemed to absorb the light. Nicholas Cole sat across from Noah Daniels, his piercing eyes locked on the disgraced officer. Noah's wrists were still cuffed, his bravado long gone, replaced by a nervous tension that filled the air. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. Nicholas leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "You've already lost, Daniels. Assaulting a federal agent is enough to end your career, but I have a feeling there's more to this. A lot more." Noah avoided eye contact, his gaze fixed on the table. His fingers twitched, betraying the inner turmoil he was trying to suppress. "You've got what you wanted," he muttered. "I screwed up. What else is there to say?" Nicholas didn't let up. "What's there to say? How about why a small-town cop feels comfortable planting evidence and assaulting innocent people? Or why you seem so confident in getting away with it?" Noah's jaw tightened. The seconds ticked by, each one adding to the weight of the room. Finally, he exhaled sharply, the resistance draining from his posture. "It's not just me," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't have a choice." Nicholas's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Noah hesitated, then leaned back, his face a mixture of exhaustion and fear. "There's a group," he began reluctantly. "Officers, judges, even some higher-ups in the department. They're all in on it, taking payouts from gang leaders, drug dealers, anyone with enough cash to buy protection. They make sure cases disappear, evidence gets lost, witnesses back down." Nicholas's expression hardened, the implications hitting him like a blow. "And you're part of this." "I didn't want to be," Noah said quickly, desperation creeping into his voice. "But once you're in, there's no way out. They control everything. If you don't play along." He trailed off, the unspoken threat hanging in the air. Nicholas studied him, his mind racing. This wasn't just a case of one bad cop. It was a systemic rot that went far deeper than he had imagined. He felt a flicker of pity for Noah, a man who had clearly been in over his head. But pity didn't absolve guilt. "You expect me to feel sorry for you?" Nicholas asked, his tone sharp. "You had a choice, Daniels. You could have blown the whistle, walked away. Instead, you stayed, and innocent people paid the price." Noah's face crumpled, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. "You don't understand," he said weakly. "They've destroyed me, my family, my life." Nicholas leaned closer, his voice low and unyielding. "They've already destroyed you. The only difference now is whether you go down as a coward or as the man who helped take them down." Noah looked up, his eyes wet with unshed tears. For a moment, he said nothing, then gave a small, defeated nod. "What do you need me to do?" Nicholas sat back, the faintest hint of satisfaction flickering across his face. "Names, locations, every detail you can remember. You're going to help me clean this up." As Noah began to talk, the tangled web of corruption unraveled before Nicholas's eyes. Names of officers he'd worked with, judges he trusted, even politicians with spotless public images. Each revelation was a dagger, but Nicholas remained stoic, his resolve hardening with every word. By the time Noah finished, the room was silent again. Nicholas stood, his voice steady. "You've done the right thing, finally. But don't think for a second this absolves you." Noah nodded, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Nicholas left the room, his mind already racing with the next steps. The battle ahead was larger than he had anticipated, but he was ready. The system was flawed, but it wasn't beyond saving, and he wasn't about to let it crumble under the weight of greed and corruption. The early morning sky was still dark as Nicholas Cole stood with his team, their silhouettes framed by the flashing red and blue lights of the convoy. Weeks of meticulous planning had led to this moment. Using the information extracted from Noah Daniels, Nicholas had mapped out the corrupt network that had festered within the system for years. Now, they were ready to dismantle it. "Move in," Nicholas ordered through his radio, his voice calm but firm. The operation unfolded with precision. Teams stormed safe houses, confiscating piles of dirty money and illegal firearms. High-ranking officers and public officials were led out in cuffs, their faces pale as the cameras captured their fall from grace. For Nicholas, the takedown was bittersweet. Justice was being served, but the revelations left an indelible mark on the community's trust in the very institutions meant to protect them. By dawn, it was over. Nicholas stood in the aftermath, surveying the scene as his team processed evidence and escorted suspects into vans. He felt a surge of satisfaction, but it was laced with the weight of what this victory meant. A system exposed, its cracks laid bare. Days later, the fallout rippled through the city. Headlines screamed betrayal. Protests erupted, citizens demanding reform. Nicholas understood their anger. The revelations had shaken his faith too. But where others saw collapse, he saw an opportunity to rebuild, stronger and better. In the midst of this turmoil, Noah Daniels awaited sentencing. The former officer had cooperated fully, giving Nicholas and his team the leverage they needed to topple the network. But cooperation didn't absolve him. He was sentenced to prison, a judgment that left him visibly broken. A few weeks into his sentence, Nicholas received an envelope. It was a letter from Noah, the handwriting uneven and hesitant. Nicholas sat at his desk, the precinct quiet around him as he unfolded the paper. "Agent Cole," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness, and I know I deserve every consequence of my actions. But I need you to know that you were right. I had choices, and I made the wrong ones. For too long, I blamed the system, my circumstances, everyone but myself. You forced me to face that, and for that, I thank you. Maybe now I can start to become the man I was supposed to be." Nicholas stared at the words, his emotions a mix of anger, pity, and reluctant respect. Noah's acknowledgement felt genuine, but it didn't undo the damage he caused. Nicholas folded the letter neatly and set it aside, deciding not to respond. His focus was on the living, on ensuring the system Noah had exploited would no longer create people like him. In the weeks that followed, Nicholas began volunteering at a community outreach program, speaking to young people about accountability, integrity, and the dangers of unchecked power. He met faces full of hope, curiosity, and skepticism, and it reminded him why he chose this path. As he left the program one evening, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city. Nicholas paused, taking in the sight. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, he felt hope, not just for the system, but for the people it was meant to serve. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one unforgettable story. Don't leave without subscribing and letting us know where you're watching from. Your engagement means the world to us and inspires us to keep creating stories that move and inspire. Let's grow this community together, because every story deserves to be heard, and your voice makes it even more powerful.